Dear audience, today I have put together an intriguing assortment of unique and extraordinary admissions from wives about their unfaithfulness. These affairs will remain a secret between us, hidden from their spouses. Settle in, and let's get started. The First Lady, 38, gathers with her school companions once a month. As she listens to the girls passionately discuss their love lives, she grins and remains quiet. She can't share with them the details about parent-teacher conferences, the maid, facial treatments, or hyaluronic acid. Taking care of herself is her occupation, which she carries out mechanically. She wonders why she invests so much effort and tolerates waxing and anti-cellulite massages. She's convinced that if she neglected to apply lipstick one day, her husband would be the last to observe. Nevertheless, she recognizes that radically altering her life, getting divorced, and starting anew would be unwise. To feel feminine again, a straightforward affair would be enough. But with whom? Her reputation and finances have reached a critical point, operating in her favor. The handful of men she knows have grown resistant to her allure over the years of her content marriage, and she acknowledges it's reciprocal. There's something defeatist about having a fling with a coworker, friend's spouse, or former schoolmate, not to mention the danger of gossip spreading. Astonished by her own composure, she formulated a plan after contemplating the scenarios. She awaited a business trip to Europe and packed semi-transparent undergarments, Louboutin stilettos, and a bottle of Miramistin in her luggage, along with a couple of regular business outfits. During the preparation, the infidelity transformed from an escapade into a work assignment for her. It might not have been the emotion she was seeking, but without it, she likely wouldn't have proceeded. At the hotel breakfasts, a fit Asian gentleman, seemingly a businessman, captured her attention. He stood out from the actively eating, overweight Germans and Englishmen. However, he appeared to disregard her completely, smiling only at the contents of his plate. By evening, she'd completed all her tasks, and the next day was open. She could have stayed in bed until noon or gone to the pool, but her intuition drove her to the restaurant. This time, her just-out-of-bed look was noticed. The man, having diverted his attention from his omelet, studied her profile for a long time before catching up with her in the lobby and offering to show her the city. They had a wonderful day together, with him pretending to be a guide and her pretending not to notice that he was quoting from a guidebook. The fact that he never inquired about her husband or children, along with the awkwardness of his compliments, transported them to a parallel world where she was young, beautiful, desirable, and completely unencumbered. In the evening, they had dinner at the hotel and went up to her room. When she was planning her devious scheme, she was terribly worried about the details. How to lure him to her room under some pretext, how to slip him a condom without ruining the romance, whether to turn off the lights or not, and most importantly, how to survive the morning when she would wake up next to a stranger. But apparently, the stranger had experience in these matters. Everything happened simply and naturally, in the dark, without silly affections. In the morning, she woke up alone. They missed each other at breakfast. There were no notes at the reception, flowers, calls, or business cards with a phone number. The man tactfully disappeared, giving her not only a wonderful night, but also the feeling that everything that had happened was an erotic dream, and that nothing had actually occurred. The pangs of conscience she had anticipated never came, nor did a particular desire to return to the bosom of her family. It's like after sex. Some people want warmth and affection, while others prefer to be alone. 3.5 hours later, when the plane landed at Sheremetyevo, this mood remained. Her husband was there to meet her. They always teased each other. The harsher, the better. This time he asked how the trip was, and if she had found a lover. She chose the proven method. The best offense is a good offense. Oh, darling. Young, beautiful, rich? No, just an interesting middle-aged Asian man. Good in bed, not bad, a B+. What, did I miss the handout? Are you joking? She replied. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. Ideally, she should have answered, I'm serious, which she was tempted to do. But caution prevailed. She said, what do you think? And hid under her husband's arm, afraid to meet his eyes. It seemed that he really thought for a couple of seconds about whether she, the best wife, lover, and mother in the world, could cheat on him. He thought about it, perhaps for the first time in his life, and decided that it couldn't be. But this thought excited him for a long time. He would innocently suggest having dinner at a Chinese or Japanese restaurant to her taste, or try very ineptly to eavesdrop on her phone conversations, or look over her shoulder when she was communicating on Facebook. In turn, she watched with interest as her husband read a detective novel, spread butter on a sandwich, or talked on the phone, and asked herself, if it weren't for all these years of living together, if I saw this person for the first time, would I like him? And she realized that she would. She even started to feel jealous of him, as if he had cheated on her and not the other way around. A year has passed since that moment. She doesn't regret anything but knows that she won't have any more adventures like that in her life. The second woman, Angela, 28, regarded her future spouse as a demigod. She had just enrolled in university, and he was already an acclaimed director. When he spoke about Tarkovsky, Eisenstein, and von Trier, she listened with her mouth agape, absorbing his every word like a sponge. But this proved to be insufficient for a content family life. In the initial months of their marriage, it became apparent that cinema was their sole common topic. They didn't get along in daily life or in bed. She desperately wanted a child, but her husband's rare insights were exclusively verbal in nature, which, unfortunately, doesn't result in children. Along with her desire, her appetite vanished. She lost 22 pounds and seldom left the set. In the summer after her second year, she went to Crimea for an internship, filming a drama about how challenging life is for a misunderstood woman. What else could she ponder? There wasn't enough money to hire a full-fledged film crew. She had 3 young actors, her friends, plus a cinematographer, and a guy who, with a complete lack of education and relevant skills, served as an editor, lighting technician, costume designer, and sometimes a supporting actor. The guy was pure gold. He didn't swear, drink, or smoke. He followed her around like a puppy, carried out all her orders, and in the evenings, after a hard day's work, he would walk her to the hotel. His silhouette, which would have done credit to a fitness instructor, loomed under the windows until she turned off the light. At first it amused her, then it began to annoy her. And then they had crazy sex. The affair lasted until the end of filming and, of course, was kept in the strictest secrecy. For her, a girl from a good family with almost 2 higher educations, it was a disgrace. What embarrassed her was not the fact that she had cheated on her husband, but with whom she had cheated. He had no education, was not at all from her circle, practically a plumber from an adult film. There were no conversations about the sublime that she was so used to at home. But she couldn't control herself, couldn't come to terms with her body, which liked simple, tanned guys with chiseled muscles. Plus, the boy was well-mannered and somehow unspoiled in a good way. For example, he never swore in front of a woman, unlike her intellectual husband. With him, she felt like a fragile, helpless real woman. With her return home, the connection was severed. She honestly tried to rebuild her relationship with her husband, but nothing worked out. The same infrequent sex and everything going in circles. This went on for another 5 years. By the end of the institute, she was tired of fighting with herself. She doesn't remember now what provoked the scandal, but upon returning from another creative vacation, she told her husband everything she thought about him, his films, and their marriage, which was as far-fetched and fruitless as they were. He was most shocked by the stories of her adventures. That's when she heard so many new and interesting things about herself, like what women who behave this way are called, and how he had loved her madly all these years, and how he had wanted a child. Of course, in the absence of an heir, he blamed her. A month later, they divorced, and almost simultaneously with the divorce, she received her director's diploma and went to shoot in Romania. There she met her current husband, a ski instructor, and gave birth to his son. They are happy, but she still remembers that sultry Crimean summer and the tanned editor. After all, it was thanks to that story that she realized what kind of man she really needed. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. The lady, 36, always believed that a husband couldn't betray a remarkable and brilliant woman like her, even if she didn't have intimate relations with him for 3 months. She would work like crazy and only manage to prepare dinner at home, exchange a few words with him, and doze off while putting their 1-year-old child to bed. She doesn't recall precisely how she discovered her husband's unfaithfulness. As they say, our psyche has the capacity to erase the most unpleasant things from our memory. But she remembers that there was irrefutable proof, and he didn't even attempt to deny it. She threw a tantrum. He swore that he loved only her, and after a couple of weeks, the passion subsided. But the aftertaste lingered. Her husband left for a month-long business trip. She sent the child to the dacha with the nanny, and began to ponder what to do with the freedom that had suddenly fallen upon her. The answer came quickly. One morning, still sleepy, she parked her car in some alley and was walking to the office. Someone called out to her at the crosswalk. She looked up and couldn't believe her eyes. It was a man she had a brief and not particularly passionate romance with in college. After they broke up, she began to romanticize his image and eventually convinced herself that it was the great love of her life that had ended by a ridiculous coincidence. The ridiculous coincidence was that he drunkenly pinched her bottom at a party. She called him a jerk in front of everyone. He said that she was a fool herself, and that was it. The man was looking at her slyly, straight in the eyes. "Long time no see, huh? Where are you heading?" "To work." "I'm late too." They exchanged phone numbers and emails and went to work. She received the first SMS exactly at the moment when she crossed the threshold of her office, and 5 minutes later, she received an email from him. He began to play with words, building bridges from their shared past to the present, recalling songs, passwords, and meeting points. Somewhere around lunchtime, she realized that if they met, they would definitely end up in bed, sooner or later. With the remnants of her consciousness, she began to weigh all the pros and cons of such a prospect, and came to the conclusion that her husband had cheated on her first, thereby opening the score. She was ready to even it out. A friendly draw would have suited her. Why did she need this? She didn't want to take revenge on him. Rather, she wanted to test herself and try to transfer her feelings to her husband. Why did he cheat on her? What can a story on the side give? Self-affirmation, attention, adrenaline, emotions that had become dull after 8 years of living together. They met that same evening and went for a walk in the city center, wandering through alleys. They dug through memories, laughed endlessly, and felt like teenagers. After about 2 hours, they went to his place, listened to music, and found more and more in common. Closer to 2 in the morning, she asked to take a shower to freshen up before going home. Funny tricks. She remembered doing the same thing in college. As a result, they ended up in bed, of course, and this long-awaited story, the coveted event, became the point of no return. Before all this fuss with diapers and baby clothes began, she considered her husband an excellent lover. It's not that she changed her mind after giving birth. No, she just forgot about it. Sorry for the pun, but the big picture is seen from a distance. In short, this whole love affair ended with her complete disappointment. Trying not to look the man in the eyes in the morning, she left for work. That day, he wrote her SMS and emails again, but she wasn't as eager to respond anymore. However, she decided to meet with him one more time. Of course, she didn't share her problems with her husband. They discussed work, friends, trips, and so on. With each minute, she realized how far she was from this man, from his way of life, endless failures, and uninteresting acquaintances. Citing fatigue, she went home. When her husband returned, he was surprised by the change that had taken place in her. She was glad to see him and, for the first time in a long time, passionately made love to him. He didn't seem to understand anything, but it became clear to her why people cheat at all. They are looking for what they lack in their family. Her husband lacked intimacy. She lacked lightness. They had forgotten how to appreciate each other. After these 2 infidelities, a kind of crisis, their relationship got better, much better. The woman, Yulia, 34, hears the announcement on the plane. "Dear passengers, please fasten your seatbelts. In 20 minutes, our plane will land at Amsterdam Airport." And so, her freedom has only 20 minutes left to live. At the airport, her husband will meet her with their eldest son, and maybe her Dutch mother-in-law will come too. She will again be a mother of the family, with a frown between her eyebrows, a quick speech with commanding notes in her voice, both in Dutch and in a practical manner of dressing. Minimal makeup, no heels, everything is simple and comfortable. There will be no trace left of that femme fatale. Her second life began 2 years ago. Coming to her senses after the birth of her second son, she came to Moscow alone to visit her parents. She remembered that she and her husband hadn't made love for probably 5 months. When Anton almost forcefully, roughly pressed her against him, it was in a nightclub. She hadn't been to nightclubs in ages. They met about half an hour ago, and half an hour later they were already going to his place. And that night was magical, 10 times magical. On their first meeting, she didn't know if she needed all this and didn't leave him any leads or passwords. But he quickly found her through Odnoklasniki. 3 months later, she came to Moscow for a few days, and they met again. She liked Anton's assertiveness. She had gotten unused to it. The Dutch are completely different. Her husband, for example, was always terribly indecisive. She remembers when they first met, and things were heading towards intimacy. She had to take the initiative into her own hands. He was all hesitant, afraid to violate her personal space, carrying some feminist nonsense. He turned out to be a good husband, though, hard-working, patient, and reliable as a rock. True, after the birth of their first child, all their conversations were reduced to 3 topics: children, money, home. Since the crisis happened, they both worked a lot. Her husband apparently believed that if he provided 60% of the family budget and sat with the children 3 evenings a week, his marital duty was exhausted, and it was also not necessary to make love to her. They were both so tired, and they had to get up so early tomorrow. Over the past 2 years, she'd been to Moscow about 4 times. All those times, she saw Anton. This story benefited her relationship with her husband better than family psychotherapy. She started to like herself, to like her life. She seemed to have regained spontaneity and freshness, just like the woman her husband fell in love with 6 years ago. When she returned to the Netherlands after that first shock in the nightclub, she stopped complaining, snapping, and yelling in the evenings. Whether it was guilt or greater clarity in priorities, she and her husband even started making love. Not as often as she would like, but still. Not a single living soul knows about the existence of Anton in her life. Sometimes he seems like a phantom to her, a character from a series that she manages to star in periodically. She honestly doesn't know if they will ever see each other again, but that's what she likes most about their story.